Hey folks, I'm Matt. I run product design and engineering at Owner, and I'm very happy today to be joined by Rajesh Bhatia, who runs developer productivity, experience, and many, many other things at Cloudflare. But I'll let him tell you about all the things that he does there. So, really great to have you here, Rajesh. Would love for you to give a brief intro of your role at Cloudflare and all the things that you are doing there.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Very excited to chat with you today. I know we go long back as well. I've been at Cloudflare now for 8 years, mostly helping out with the internal productivity platform teams, and mostly having a lot of platform view into how the remit is to help our engineers life be very efficient internally, and so anything that we can do to make that a possibility, that's what I've been mostly helping out with recently. And I've been in the industry now for quite a bit number of years, and very excited to see what impact my team at Cloudflare is making for the AI agentic shift that is happening across the industry right now.
Yeah, one of the best things about Cloudflare generally is how open and honest and transparent you are about all the work you do. And one of the reasons we're speaking here today, apart from the fact that we go way back, as you said, is you published this amazing blog around how you are using Cloudflare primitives to build your own AI engineering stack. And I think in the blog post you called out there's almost 4,000 people using it, 93% of R&D, 295 teams using it across like various different vectors and for different use cases. It's very rare to see that level of transparency like from a company. So it was a really really great read, and we'll share the blog in the bottom of this video. But would love for you to summarize a little bit. So I gave some key metrics and insights there, but would love for you to just give a couple of minutes on what is it your team has been working on and what have they built internally at Cloudflare using a bunch of the AI primitives.
Yeah, so basically, we've been trying to build a platform layer around AI tooling at Cloudflare, not just coding assistance, but the stack that makes the tools useful and safe inside a real engineering organization. Um, this was a journey. This around this time last year, Matthew Prince, who's our CEO, in one of the earnings call. Made a statement saying MCP is going to change how everybody's role in the future, and we took that to heart. We internally set up a IMARS team, which is internal MCP agents and server rollout squad. We call it. It's a mouthful, but the goal there was to be able to get interested engineers to help out build internal MCP servers and agent infrastructure. This was on top of the customer-facing features that we were already trying to push for. At around this time, I want to say May, June last year, that quickly expanded into a more broader SDLC effort, led by the productivity platform team, and that led to for us to use the primitives that we have been building for our customers and leverage it for our internal use cases as well. So things like AI gateway was something that we leveraged for doing model routing and building controls and providing visibility. Axis, which is our identity provider, a solution, became very important to be able to help with managing that identity across the initiatives or the tooling that we were trying to build. And then we also implemented a lot of, we had a lot of context that we were already building in our solutions like Backstage, which is our internal developer portal. And that and Agents.md became even more critical in our AI SDLC story. And then finally, also started investing a lot in our AI code reviewers and engineering codex, which is like engineering standards which are machine readable. And that all together helped out to build a more scalable tool that we are leveraging internally. I mean, the original problem was simple. People could see the promise of AI coding tools, but without context, trust, and controls, it didn't feel like we were going to be there. And so that's where we tried to start our journey in building stuff internally at Cloudflare.
So interesting. I mean, Cloudflare is a pretty large company at this point, and to get to 93% adoption, I imagine was quite the journey. I would love to hear a little bit more about what did that look like in, playing out in practice. I imagine, you had sort of 10, 15, 20% of engineers running ahead, and how did you bring the rest of the people along on the journey? That's something we see as a really big problem generally in these companies is you have sort of, 10, 20, 30% maybe that run far ahead. And you have some people that maybe a little bit more skeptical, maybe need to, a little bit more direction to push towards it. But kind of getting towards that 90 plus percent number, it feels like you've really come over the hump of adoption, and would love to for you to share your tips and tricks for other people who are struggling there.
Yeah, it was, a lot of. I mean, it is what is most important right now. Now that we have ach- passed a lot part of our journey, a high part of our journey was that it was low friction using defaults and being relevant to the real work that helped a lot with the adoption. But that wasn't the case when we started the journey and when we were starting to build out these MCP servers. And because also how the models weren't really up to the mark, it wasn't giving us a lot of interesting data points, or it was not really working and uh, identifying the workflow that we typically were wanting to take leverage of. So it was slow adoption. Obviously there was an inflection point when the models get started getting better, and the good part was that we were ready with all the background work that we were doing with respect to the building of the context and building of the right sort of MCP infrastructure internally. So when that became a reality, we started seeing a lot more adoption, and because it started helping in the real work that people were doing. The other thing that also helped is that we put in a lot of effort in making the tooling better. We had one command setup that really mattered a lot. The shared config mattered, the context mattered, and that helped the tools produce better results, which eventually then led to better adoption internally as well. And not only are we seeing a lot of adoption within the R&D community as well at Cloudflare, even more adoption is happening across the non-engineering roles as well, and that has also been very gratifying to see.
Would love to poke a little bit more at the non-engineers in a second, actually, because that's a really, really interesting point. You mentioned there was a an inflection point, maybe a model where everything changed. Can you remember what that was? Can you remember the month or the model specifically that was like, okay, this works now?
I think we started introducing and playing around with some coding assistant tools pretty early. I want to say in June, July, where last year we were already starting to toy. We already introduced Windsurf IDE as one of the coding assistant tools. Obviously, we were also piloting Cloud Code and a couple of other tools while we were doing that. But sometime in November, we started looking and seeing a lot more benefit for some of the models that we were trying to leverage. I think Opus 4.5 maybe was the inflection point where that then generally made it so that it was very easy to see the kind of results we were seeing and expecting, and we were really surprised by what coding output was aligned to how our real work was going to be really there as well. So it felt like that was the inflection point for me.
The tracks. I remember feeling in January when I came back after Christmas, it felt like everyone had just spent all Christmas playing with every AI tool, and this year especially has been just so different to last year. There's a lot of skepticism last year, and it seems to have all gone over the Christmas break. People came back, and that November December time seems to have been critical as the real turning point for adoption.
Yeah, I think the whole terminology last year was vibe coding, and kind of felt that was the sort of vibe. Obviously, things are changing dramatically now. We are at this whole agentic engineering phase, which where while the vibe coding helped us uh, raise the floor of how who could participate in all this AI coding activity. What agentic engineering is helping us now do is making sure that we are meeting the quality standards and what a actual software sort of ecosystem should be, and feels like that is the shift that I can totally see is happening right now.
Makes sense to me. Oh, sorry, I pressed something on my keyboard there. Excuse me. Um, One thing that caught my eyes, like we've talked about the great adoption journey you've had, and kind of up to 93% of R&D are now using AI. How important is it to you to go after that last 7%? And have you got sort of specific things you can point to as to why that maybe last 7% haven't fully adopted usage of AI tools yet?
Yeah, what we are seeing is that a lot of people are gravitating towards mostly IDE based solutions initially, but the CLI based solutions, which is very getting very popular internally, um, uh, is difficult to, like, the whole setup and the installation process for it is much easier for folks who might have direct engineering background, but might not be so easy for someone who is in a non-engineering background. And that's where we're trying to close the gap. We're trying to make it easier to install all the dependencies that you need, and kind of have a one-click install for how those setups around the tooling usage matter. And then I feel like once that we are able to cross that hurdle, we'll see a lot more usage kind of spike. Also, what my team has been involved with is mostly around helping with coding assistance and making the agentic shift. But there's also a lot of work happening within the company in terms of using it. Like, we use Gemini workspace and in the Google workspace, and there's a lot of push in trying to do training and a lot of wins, AI wins and learnings around it. And so by educating it, by having some mandates even together along with that, I think we'll be able to see that the rest of the 7% is going to be helping overcome that bump with respect to.
It makes tons of sense. Like the power is clearly there, right? But you still have the same setup hurdles that maybe you always had. So that makes tons of sense to me. And I'm amazed it's only 7%. It shows how technology first the company already was to be able to get so high before you hit that sort of last long tail, you know?
Yeah, and also generally across the board, outside of engineering, even there's a lot of push to get AI into the use cases, and we are seeing a lot we're just amazed to see the kind of use cases people are using AI to solve internally. Obviously, there are still some skeptics here and there, and we are trying to maybe just make sure that we listen to feedback and adjust our tooling to be able to help whatever gaps we might be able to whatever gaps that people are sharing with us right now in the tooling that we have.
One of the conversations we've been having both with our customers and as part of this conference is I think you mentioned it. Like more people can now contribute, more people can write code. The cost of code is getting cheaper. I'm curious to hear, has that made it easier for non-engineers to contribute towards the Cloudflare products? Like, how do you kind of marry up the fact that code is cheaper to generate, but potentially not everyone should be shipping to production, right? And how do you think about that space?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a conundrum there. There's a lot, like, in the industry, people are trying to tackle that problem. Uh, I think the way we are trying to address that is that we've built out now a whole enforcement layer that we talk about in the blog as well, around helping make our engineering standards and codify them. We call something like engineering codex, is what we're terming that internally. And that's where we're trying to kind of make sure that we have the right best practices and make it all machine readable, and build out tooling around the whole AI code reviewer that we have implemented. The goal is to be able to use that tooling and an enforcement layer to get comfortable with any code that is getting pushed out, to at least have one layer of review and quality sort of guardrails built in, and use that as a starting point to then have the human in the loop to review work that is getting submitted, and kind of passing that through. We're not really curbing of any of that right now. We're just trying to be very pragmatic about the only way we can make change is that the more people contribute, the more we are able to try to review automatically, and then flag anything that seemed a little bit not quite meeting our standards. And that is how we're trying to achieve some of the gating that we want to do with respect to what eventually ends up in production. And so if that is the gate, really doesn't, at that point, doesn't matter the role that submitted the initial change. Obviously we will have a engineering team that will drive and own that, and review that, and there is some bottlenecks in that process. But ultimately, the team that is responsible to manage and operate the system in production will have a say in making sure that that particular change makes it out or not. And so that's how we're trying to manage that.
Makes tons of sense, and I think that's a great approach. Is if the expectations are codified well, so that both an AIs and humans can understand it, then why not let everyone contribute, right? Ideally, someone can take quite an underspecified prompt, and it gives a pretty good outcome actually, because you've done such a good job of providing all the context. Makes tons of sense to me.
Yeah.
You spoke in your blog about Agents.md, which I think is pretty accepted as a standard at this point. The thing that is, at least in my experience, less common is the investment in Backstage. Not as many companies are kind of sticking with IDPs. I feel at this point. So we'd love to hear your thinking on this. Like, where does your investments into Backstage fit into the sort of AI story?
Yeah, you know it very well, the story and how Backstage went came about. But yes, Backstage is, and again, it's still a work in progress. The Backstage data and context is only as good as the data that we are feeding into it. But ultimately, it does gives us a good system map. It That's what Backstage does. Agents gives us a good map of our repos, and the code tells the model what's in front of it, but it does not tell the model who owns the service, what the dependencies are, where the boundaries matter, what databases are being talked to, what conventions are that the teams considers non-negotiable, non-negotiable. And that's where I feel like Backstage and Agents MD are turning out to be very important, because they reduce the amount of guessing the models have to do. And one thing we learned the hard way is that even with a decent context file, it is better than having none. And when the model stops guessing, the quality goes up everywhere else. And that's where I feel the Backstage investment that we made, and I think many people should make in some sort of a service catalog and the whole ecosystem that drives that sort of context, will really pay off a lot. And that is the investment that I think is really helping out initially for us as well.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense because I think one of the challenges that we saw in Backstage was actually keeping it up to date is hard, right? And that's to your point, like having a system of record is actually amazing for agents when you can have that. But I think it's probably one of those things. I'd be curious to hear your how it's played out. But I imagine actually keeping Backstage up to date is much easier now than it was pre AI because you can probably have automated scripts just checking that things are correct and making PRs to update things and doing those refactors where it makes sense. So I think if you've got the plumbing in place to make sure that it is, as close to a source of truth as possible, I can see that being incredibly powerful for big multi-repo organizations like Cloudflare.
Yeah, and we have around 4,000 plus repos in our repository, in our CI/CD system. And yes, some of those automations have really helped us make and keep our data not stale. But still, there is a human involved in verifying some of the data, and I think that is where we still have some work to do to keep the data to a quality standard. But what is really helping out and what I'm seeing is that we've built a lot of tooling around usage, and all that really needs the data in Backstage to be current. And I feel like different teams are getting very motivated to make sure that they can leverage that usage data. And if Backstage is needing to have be the right quality bar for what they want to what they want to achieve, they're really making the effort to go back and correct that data. And I feel like automation and some of the human review together is really working wonders with respect to upping the quality bar for what Backstage has right.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. So, because Backstage is so important for the agentic engineering workflow, people are incentivized to make sure that the data is good. So it builds this like nice reinforcement mechanism where people want it to be good because it makes their work easier, and so therefore they do the effort to make sure they review the PRs to make sure there is a system of record.
Yeah, and we're also building a lot of tooling around flagging where we need where there are gaps, and that together with the incentive that we have provided for users to use that together is really helping out a lot.
Makes sense. One of the things I loved about your blog post, Rajesh, was there was a lot of specificity around measuring requests, tokens, providers, merge request volume. It felt like you've really approached this from a thinking first class about, okay, I want to make sure that we're not just building for the sake of building. Like there's some evidence of, in absence of a better term, like return on investment. Like return on investment for AI is incredibly difficult to measure, and it's very, very expensive. There's a famously the Uber CTO spent their entire token budget by the 1st of April, and we're seeing more and more of this discussion. So, would love to get some insight from you on how you've thought about kind of measuring usage, return on investment, and what your advice to others starting out on this journey would be, where they know it's going to be expensive, but they don't really know how to think about making sure it's worth the money right quite yet.
Yeah. So we have thought about it very carefully. Obviously, requests and tokens tell us like usage, like merge requests and pipelines tell us about platform activity, but they do not tell us what value that we're providing. I think some people might uh, always end up thinking about PR throughput and saying that that's an easy count and easy measure of what how much productivity there is. But I think that is not the right way of looking at it. It is easy to count, sure, but it is also very easy to overinterpret. And so the more meaningful long-term question really is like what is the feature velocity and outcomes that we can measure with less friction, getting changes out safely. If we can kind of measure those carefully, that will really be a better way of trying to um, get a meaningful interpretation of how that AI adoption is providing value. We are obviously trying to tweak and learn as we go, but what has really helped us is that our um, uh, products like the AI Gateway and Workers AI is giving us some sort of operational truth with respect to how all this usage is working out. We can like see the model mixes, the cost curves. We can see what cache behavior we are running into, and like what are the open source models and how they are already providing to be good enough for certain use cases. So that is helping us tweak how we use those open source models in our say AI code reviewer use cases. But that does not answer every productivity question we have. It just keeps us honest about what's actually happening. So my advice is going to be try to build out those that visibility and the cost attribution and the metrics ahead of time before the whole journey begins, because then that will help you tweak your usage and your tooling along the way. And I feel like that is a and it's going to be an ongoing process. It's something that you still tweak. We still are learning about what and how we should be tweaking our system. For example, we have a whole AI code reviewer, and we're trying to see and the way the AI code reviewer is set up is it is a multi-agent setup. And so we're trying to see for the security review, for the code quality review, for the documentation review, what is it that we can adjust and tweak with respect to the models and the cost attribution to it, so that we get the right value out of it, but also at the same time are trying to be very conscious about some of the cost optimization around that. I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, that was the general thoughts I had around this topic.
No, it makes tons of sense, and it's really tracks with kind of what we're seeing too. Is it's really hard to get to a place where you can concretely measure outcomes. I like the feature velocity framing. I think that makes tons of sense to me. You mentioned around tweaking models, having a multi-model setup, and optimizing both, I guess, outcomes and cost, and trying to balance those two things off. That's really interesting. How are you doing that? Do you have like internal evals you're running, or is it mostly on vibes based on how engineers are reporting things? Like, how deeply are you investing in that space?
I think we do have a eval system that we're trying to leverage for some of the code review prompts and what value we are getting out of it. But then also feedback that we're collecting as we are rolling out, especially around the whole AI code reviewer, and then adjusting to see what our cost attribution is looking like, and seeing and experimenting is how we're trying to really manage that right now. So all of it actually, some feedback, some us reviewing the results. We're also tracking a lot of metrics. For example, in our AI code reviewer, we have this feature called break glass that in case currently in our process we have integrated into our CI process, and we have made it so that we really need the AI reviewer to also first approve before you can proceed and have a human approve the particular PR or MR. And in that process, we are collecting a lot of metrics around how many times are people actually fixing what the AI reviewer is telling them what needs fixing, how many times they might engage with the break glass feature. And if those are things that are happening, we're using that data to tweak our results. We also have some feedback that we are capturing for each review, and we track those metrics, and you are using that to change some parts of the behavior of how we can tweak either the model or adjust it to add new sort of rules so that the reviewer can respond appropriately based on the feedback we're receiving.
That makes tons of sense. I also love that you are making sure that pull requests have a approval from an AI reviewer before going to a human. Because I think one of the things that we've been seeing is, the reviewers becoming the new bottleneck, right? Is it's so easy to generate like 50 PRs in a day. Are they all valuable? Maybe, maybe not. But someone else shouldn't have to look at that until you've approved it. You may as well have an AI look at it, and then you can kind of push that context into someone else. So I think that's a really smart actionable takeaway is if you're not using some sort of AI code reviewing product to at least do the first pass before it goes to a human, like you're missing out on quite a lot of value there, I feel.
Yeah. And in our AI reviewer journey, I mean, we had some initial misses. I mean, because all we were doing is just giving a diff or a patch to a model, and it's spitting out some opinions. And engineers don't trust AI opinions; they just trust clear findings tied to standards that we've agreed upon. And that's where we introduced this whole engineering codex paradigm, where we are trying to use that as a way to drive a lot of our AI findings, reviewer findings. And that was the big lesson, is that early on, the reviewer sounded very subjective. The feedback was like ignored. But once the output became more structured, we were able to calibrate the severity and findings and kind of map it to the codex rules. It became even more useful, and it basically it shipped it stopped sounding more like maybe this is a problem and started sounding more like this violates a standard that we actually care about. And I think that changed, and that change really helped build out the trust model entirely, and kind of helped make that adoption really, really faster. And a lot of people are engaging with it. Obviously, as we are trying to build out more enforcements and kind of rolling it out, we need to be very mindful about collecting feedback and adjusting and slow rolling that out, because it can be jarring sometimes, like managing enforcement and DevX. Similar to managing DevX and security, we need to kind of figure out a good way of balancing that. And that's what we're trying to tweak all the time right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think for smaller companies who don't have some of the burden that large enterprises like Cloudflare have, if you have SOC 2 certifications, there's certain things you have to do as part of these review processes, right? And that's where DevX gets hard. It's balancing the experience with the obligations that you have to meet certain customer requirements. So I love that you're approaching it from a place of we need to balance both. We want the productivity, but we also are aware of the trade-offs that we need to do. And I really like that you've made the code review like objective. You mentioned it was a bit like at first it was subjective, just like, hey, just tell me if this is good, go code. And then someone would disagree. But to codify what actually good looks like in engineering and tell the AI to like, hey, read these rules and then just enforce them across pull requests makes it a much easier conversation, and that adoption journey is much easier that way.
Yes. And we have found really good use of it. I think engineers internally really like the tool that we have built. Shout out to Ryan Skidmore, who built it internally, and that has really turned out to be an excellent investment. And another thing I want to probably point out here is that we did look at third party code reviewing tools and wanted to adopt that um, around this time last year. But I think the call we made is that we will go invest in building our own internal AI code reviewing tool. And that has really paid off really well, because I feel like we've been able to customize it the way we want to set up based on what our engineering standards are. And we've been able to build out a whole multi agent setup as a part of the code reviewing tool, and an ecosystem, because then now we have a security agent that will help with lot of security best practices that it can go follow. And similarly, we have code quality, and those that sort of customization, I felt like it would have been difficult if we had gone with a third party provider for this particular tool, internally at least.
That makes sense. So your blog post ends by saying the next thing coming is background agents, which is kind of the thing, the purpose of this conference. I think it makes. I love the journey we've gone on here because it's exactly the journey pretty much every company is going to go on. There'll be no AI. You'll go to sort of kind of human in seat AI, if you will, where you'll be present. Maybe you're doing multiple things at once. Maybe have 8 terminals open, but ultimately you're present and pushing things forward to the next iteration, which is background agents. Would love to hear a little bit from you on how you think about this next phase, like what background agents means in your context and how you're thinking about this space.
Yeah, I see it as a movement from, say, assisted work to like delegated work. And there is some work that we're trying to do to be able to not directly my team, even at the wider org level, in our dev platform ecosystem. uh, we have all the primitives that we have introduced as a part of the Agents Week that just passed, where we have sandboxes, the Agent SDK. There is a lot of other interesting sort of features and products that we deployed, all all to help out in that particular journey that we want to carve out for ourselves, both for our customers and for our internal use cases as well. So once an agent can run, say, durably in the cloud with the same tools and guardrails, longer workflows become natural. Migrations like repo-wide changes, test generation, documentation, all that becomes more of anything that you think of an operational task will be possible to do. But the key bit is that the trust boundary changes too. Once the agent is off the box, you still need to be able to have the right identity, the execution isolation, and the governance. They will continue to matter more, not less. And to be able to build out that ecosystem is going to be what we'll be trying to focus on next internally.
Makes tons of sense. One of the things that we're seeing often is there's kind of like a build versus buy conversation that people start to explore with background agents. I think it makes way more sense why Cloudflare would build this because it's ultimately a product you can ship to customers potentially too. But you mentioned for the code review agent, for example, you decided to build it. I would love for you to share some insights on how you approach those conversations generally, both for background agents, maybe for the code review agent, maybe even for just adopting some of this. It seems like you went very much on the side of build as much as possible. Um, where's the trade-offs there, and when do you think sometimes you would look to buy versus kind of build it all from scratch?
Yeah, I think Cloudflare has a lot of investment that we're making in all the developer platform tooling and the primitives that we were able to leverage. So I felt like it was an easier decision for us in the build versus buy conversation. It might not be the case for every company, and so that's one thing that people have to definitely take that into account. Um, we are also using some third-party providers for, obviously, for like our um, um, tooling layers, with respect to AI tooling layers even. But our default always has some. Our tendency is to figure out, especially because we want to customize a lot of our tooling to what we want to uh, tailor to what Cloudflare and how Cloudflare works. And that's when that is the most contributing factor in us deciding whether we should be building versus buying. And wherever that decision is a little bit easier, that we might have a better vendor engagement to customize the solution, we might end up buying. But most of the time, we are ending up building because we feel like we have the primitives and we are able to have the customization needs that we want and we can control. And so that's where you decide, but it might not be true for all companies. And so it's how it's in your journey. You need to decide what is right for the company where you are at right now.
Yeah, it's one of those hard questions where the answer is it depends, unfortunately, isn't it? But it makes tons of sense. Um, so it sounds like Cloudflare has gone on quite a accelerated AI journey where, within 12 months, you've gone from maybe not really using any of it to sort of 93% adoption. For someone who's watching this, who is like right at the start of their journey, maybe hasn't even looked at any of these tools yet, maybe it thinks it doesn't work in their context, what advice would you give Assume we've got not used, maybe we've used Copilot, we're in tap complete mode. Like, what's your advice to help them kind of achieve the results you have?
Yeah, I think what really comes out really strongly to me is that anybody who wants to start this tomorrow, I would really advise them to kind of build three things first. Help some build some identity solution because that will be very critical. Build some context layers or the knowledge layer that I mentioned in the blog, uh, and some way to safely execute those primitives. Like, don't start with some flashy demos. Start with parts that make the system trustworthy. I feel like that will then help build the foundation for you to have a better and successful AI adoption internally.
That makes tons of sense. So it's more focused around building the primitives, making sure you have like a sandbox layer and you have access to all the context that you need to be successful in your organization. So it's almost like you need to be able to onboard the AI as if it's a human, right? It needs to be able to have the same context, the same trust that you can give to an engineer.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for your time here, Trajesh. I think I hope people will get a lot of useful insights out of this. I mentioned at the top of this, but there's a really great blog post about the AI engineering stack that Cloudflare built internally. It's very public on the blog, and it shows you how you could build something yourself on their stack too, which is incredible. So we'll link to it so you can check it out. Is there anywhere else you want to point people, Rajesh? Is there any other sort of blogs, talks, or anything else you want to share about the Cloudflare's journey here?
Yeah, we did this Agents Week week prior to this, and we have a lot of interesting, maybe 30 plus blogs that we published. I would point people to that for sure. Like for us, like what started as a journey for a CEO call to action became like 11-month effort to like rethink not just how cloud code is written, but how code gets reviewed, how standards gets enforced, how changes ship across different repos. So every layer runs on the same products our customers are using. So definitely you will get a lot of input from the blogs that were published. And like I said, what we've built internally is just the first version of where engineering is going. We are clear eyed that there is more work to be done, and really proud for what the team internally has done. But there's more ahead of us here.
Maybe we'll see you back next year, and we can hear about the shift from on the machine to delegated work, as you said.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe there will be a Rajesh agent talking to.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much, Rajesh.